Hello and thank you for joining us for Witness TV. I'm your host, Rachel BRYSON. On today's show, we're going to introduce you to a laywoman from the Diocese of Erie that is being considered for sainthood. We then travel to New Holland and speak with members of the Knights of Columbus about the Marian Prayer Program. Gnoza from the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference then joins us for your weekly update from the Capitol. Now, to begin our show, we want to introduce you to the late Dr. Gertrude Barber. Now, Dr. Barber was a renowned Erie educator and woman of faith who dedicated her life to serving children and adults with intellectual disabilities and also their families. On December 12th of this past year, Bishop Lawrence Persico from the Diocese of Erie opened a cause for canonization to sainthood for Dr. Barber. Well, we spoke with Monsignor Thomas McSweeney, a retired priest and former director of the Office of Evangelization for the Diocese of Erie, who serves as the diocesan postulate for this cause. He spoke to us about this process.
Hi, I'm Monsignor Tom McSweeney of the wonderful Diocese of Erie, Pennsylvania, on the other side from where you all are. And I'm delighted to introduce myself to you as the postulator. That is the person who presents the case for an individual that has been deemed worthy of consideration for canonization. I was at a wonderful little luncheon in August of 2018. And we were discussing Bishop Fulton Sheen. And many of you may be familiar with the fact that Bishop Fulton Sheen has gone through the process and is eligible for canonization. There have been some holdups for a whole variety of reasons, which I won't go into. But when I was having a conversation with some of my friends about a year and a half ago now, and talking about Sheen's canonization, it was almost spontaneously that they all said, well, you know, we had a wonderful lady here in Erie, Pennsylvania, who everybody was ready to declare a saint while she was still walking the hallways. And I said, well, let's see, who would that be? And they said, Gertrude A. Barber, Dr. Barber, who back in the 1930s made a decision to commit herself to castaways, literally, children who had intellectual disabilities, behavioral disabilities of some sort. And she, as a young woman, felt her vocation was to be a liberator, a crusader for these poor children. And when I say castaways, I mean it. Parents didn't know what to do. They were put aside. So the fact is, this conversation then developed, well, we know that you have an interest in Bishop Sheen. I had done my doctoral dissertation on Bishop Sheen. And so I said, well, let me investigate it. I'll go ask the Erie Bishop, Bishop Lawrence Persico. And he said, well, Tom, why don't you get in touch with Monsignor Edward Losi, who is the Vicar General for the diocese and has a wonderful depth of understanding and compassion for a cause such as this, and also brings a background of canon law. Because when you get involved with this process, and it is a process, one step at a time. And our first order of business was to come up with an association of the faithful who would have to organize themselves canonically under church law. And then among that members of that association, elect a postulator, a person who would represent their case to the bishop in the form of a petition, which is called a libellus. Now, I'm not going to get real Vatican on you here, but I do want to say that it is a process, and we went and dotted all the I's and crossed the T's, and we got to a point where I was able, on behalf of this association of people who were interested in instituting the cause for Gertrude Barber, to present the petition to the bishop. The association formed in August. We got the petition together and presented it to the bishop in October. And lo and behold, on December, Bishop Persico, on the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mary of the Americas, signed an edict that said, I've read the petition here, I've seen the argumentation. I say there is cause here enough to open the cause. And so he did that, lots of celebration, and now we're moving into the second phase. At the end of this first phase, Gertrude was declared a servant of God. Now, the next step we'll be going into is the venerable stage, and then can she be declared blessed, and then ultimately a saint, canonized, beatified. A woman going out and finding a little classroom in the YWCA and taking a few kids in there with her concept of special. She didn't see these kids as disabled. She saw them as special. And she lived that out. And I must tell you, you can see how her faith informed that, never giving up hope, and how people's lives were changed for that alone. So her heroic virtue was there. Her reputation for holiness is well known. So we were checking off the list, but we now need to get all the witnesses that can support those particular elements of the cause. And, you know, she stayed true to that mission. She started with that little classroom at the YWCA. Again, there was no school system. They weren't taking kids into, and she would get more spaces and more teachers and more approaches and people that knew how to minister properly. And she died at the age of 88. And she was on her way for a little deserved vacation down in Florida. And she had just 3 days earlier received a check for $2 million from the state of Pennsylvania to further her cause and her work so that they could build another home, a group home center. And right up to the end, she was still plugging away for her special kids. Our mayor, his name is Joe Schember, got up at our press conference when we were announcing the opening of this cause. He stood there and, like Plato says, a man of proven worth is just simply a good man speaking plainly. And he says that he and his wife, 34 years previously, she was pregnant with twins. And they could tell that the boy was doing just fine. The girl wasn't. And they weren't suggesting abortion. The doctors weren't. That wouldn't have happened anyway, of course. But they were trying to prepare them for, and this, Joe says the word they used, now mind you, his wife's up in the hospital ready to give birth. And they're saying, you may want to put her away. Put her away. I talked about the inconsolable grief I saw in parents. He couldn't stop crying. He goes home, he has to be with his parents, and he just couldn't stop crying. They couldn't console him, everything. And that next day, she gives birth to the two kids, and he traveled within that little time frame there after the birth to see Dr. Gertrude Barber. That girl grew up in a home with them, got a job. There's a miracle.
Monsignor McSweeney noted that opening the cause for canonization is one of the first steps in a process that will likely take decades, if not longer, to complete. Next on Witness TV, we traveled to New Holland and connect with members of the Knights of Columbus Council, number 13451. Now, this council is one of many participating in the annual Marian Prayer Program, which is a program to spread devotion to our Blessed Mother. This year, the Marian image on pilgrimage is that of Our Lady Help of Persecuted Christians. As the Knights explain, the pilgrimage of this icon is to raise awareness of those Christians being persecuted for their faith in both large and small ways. Prayer services are offered as part of the pilgrimage, during which the faithful are encouraged to pray for those suffering persecution.
This is a program that's been going on since 1979. This year's icon is for persecuted Christians around the world. I believe it's a fitting at this time of year, particularly because homeless people, and I mean, it mirrors Christmas season and our Lord. So I think it's a good, but it's a program that spotlights different icons and different issues around the world.
Persecution is like a virus that is spreading. And you don't have to be a great saint to die for the faith to suffer the persecution. Most of our people in our faith does not realize that they have been persecuted one time or another. Maybe a person who's standing up for pro-life, maybe their family or their neighbors shun them because of their belief. Or maybe someone was denied a raise or a promotion account of the faith. Or maybe someone at work or a party, someone told a bad Catholic jokes, knowing that the person was a Catholic. These are the form of persecution. But persecution comes in all forms: hatred, untrust, lies. So it'd be nice if we could pray to our mother to end this terrible disease of persecution.
So we were happy to bring it here, to have people be aware of the icon as well as what it represents.
To have an icon of the Blessed Mother in your church is a reward. I mean, the Mary and Joseph and Jesus probably were the original famous refugees. It's a growing problem around the world, and even in our small community. I'm a volunteer at our local food bank, and the homeless in our area is 34%. As well, the unemployment rate is also 34%. We have homeless sleeping in cars, camping out, and living in storage sheds. And it's a growing issue that's getting bigger and bigger. And I just don't know how we could stop it at this time. But if we pray upon it, maybe we might find the answer.
The icon is the first time here. It's a special item to have. I see it as representative of the Christmas season, where, you know, our Lord, his family, they were homeless. They had to flee, you know, persecution. Here we are with these people fleeing persecution in our day and age. We'd have thought that was over. So I do think it's representative of the times, and it helps us to think about what's going on and to help to pray that things would end.
Prayer is a wonderful thing. I think the trouble with this world, we don't pray enough. Prayer is a great thing for anyone, in troubled times or in good times. There are a lot of times we forget to count our blessings, but you know, we only turn to Mary when things are not going our way. So I say pray until you can't pray no more.
A lot of the night's programs are designed for children, Coats for Kids. There's also food programs, wheelchair programs, the lesser of the people we're trying to include and to help. That's our mission, to serve, you know, wherever we can, to help the church be the right arm of the pastor in our local church, as well as globally.
We must start taking our faith seriously, and we must start praying more. You know, sometimes we just go to Mass and go home, and the cycles start over again. We have to be more than just a Sunday Catholic. We must be a Catholic 7 days a week, 24/7. You know, we need inspiration like our Blessed Lady to guide us. The parish family is very nice, the kindest people I ever met, and between the Knights of the Columbus and the parish family, it's a great time to be here.
This is the 18th Marian image sponsored by the Knights of Columbus. Well, the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference represents a number of legislative issues on behalf of the bishops of the Diocese of Pennsylvania. Today, Al Gnoza joins us with an update on the work of the conference, including their efforts to ensure parents can choose the best educational options for their children and working to keep quality nurses in Catholic schools. Al?
Hey everybody, I'm Al Gnoza, the Communications Director at the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference, and we are the lobbying arm of the state's Catholic bishops. One of the things I run into when I work with people here at the Capitol and outside the Capitol is the belief and misconception that we work only with Republicans because they are most closely aligned with our ideals, including our pro-life views. But we work with a lot of different people on a lot of different issues. I keep thinking of what Representative Jordan Harris, a Democrat from Philly, told me when I visited his office. He recalled the words of Frederick Douglass, who said, "I will work with anyone to do what is right." We get more in our perspective from the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference, Eric Failing.
We're all brothers and sisters in Christ. So the bishops are very clear. They've been very clear with their mandate to me. Go to every single legislator, find common ground, and work with them on good works. What should we be doing to try to make everybody's life better in Pennsylvania? And that's what it's all about. And you know what? And there's legislators will disagree with me on this topic or that topic, with the church on this topic or that topic. That's okay. But we can find common ground and work together. We don't dislike one another because of the disagreements. We certainly don't hate one another because of the disagreements. We work with everybody.
You know, the thing is, we don't all share the same view of what is right. One of the things we do think is right is getting the best for our Catholic schools. That includes the educational improvement tax credits, which brings corporate donations to the schools, and that also includes the issue of getting adequate nursing for those schools.
We believe that a family should have the right to choose the best education environment for their children. And look, if it's public school, that's great. We work to try to ensure that the kids in public school get the best education possible. If they want to send them to a charter school, fine, best education possible. But if they want to send to a parochial or a private school, and they need help with doing that, then we believe an EITC is a good way to provide for that. Again, it goes back to choice. Let the parents decide what's best for their children. The government should not be telling parents how to raise their children.
And we got to make sure we have the nursing services for the kids, too.
Yeah, and that's really disappointing. You know, everybody in Pennsylvania pays taxes for public schools, and that's fine. Now, in return for that, those who decide to send their kids to a non-public school, so for our parochial schools, we still get money from the state for busing, for textbooks, and for nursing. Lately, for some reason, a lot of the public school districts have been pulling back nurses out of our schools. And that leaves the children in parochial schools in a dangerous situation. I mean, I don't have to tell anybody who's listening to this, we know that the amount of complications and symptoms that children have nowadays, different allergies and so forth, has exploded. I mean, it's certainly not like it was when I was a kid. We need these nurses more than ever. We need professional care for the kids in the schools. And we believe the public schools should have all the nursing that they need, but the parochials need it as well.
Representative Greg Rothman, who I talked with last week, you may remember, is also a backer of Mike Terzai's school choice bill to help students of Harrisburg's school district go somewhere else if they want to by giving them some financial boost. Well, here is more of my interview with Representative Rothman about Terzai's bill. What's the status on that, the outlook? Is it still alive?
Yeah, I think as long as the city of Harrisburg School District continues to fail its children, there will be proposals like the Speaker's House Bill 1800. I've been talking to people during the holidays trying to come up with some compromises, some solutions for it. There's no question that they need it. I mean, the city of Harrisburg School District is going to graduate 59% of their kids. That means 41% of the kids are failed. And where they are in all the metrics are in the bottom, except for the amount of money that we spend, which is virtually the highest in the state, twice the national average, probably about 50% more than we spend in my school districts in Cumberland County. But we cannot abandon these kids in the city of Harrisburg. And so I want to make sure we do something about that this year. So 1,800 seems to be a good way of doing it, but if someone has a better idea, I'm happy to listen.
I also want to share more of my interview with our good friend, Representative Frank Ryan. We talked to him last week about his fetal remains bill, but he is also working with other mid-state legislators, including Representatives Seth Grove and Dawn Kiefer, on a number of bills to include Pennsylvania's finances.
Al, you know, I'm really pleased. I'm working with a lot of great representatives in Harrisburg. Seth Grove, Dawn Kiefer, Senator Kristen Phillips Hill, Dan Mao, Kate Klunk, Greg Rothman, Cheryl.
Yeah, we got a good group around here.
We do. We have tremendous. Stan Saylor's been tremendous. Our majority leader, Brian Culler, is phenomenal. And we got a great leadership team. I'm so thankful for our speaker as well. I'm a CPA. I've spent my entire life keeping companies out of bankruptcy, and I'm extraordinarily concerned. We are in probably one of the best economies I've seen in my entire lifetime, and we're spending well beyond that which is mandated. And we approve a budget, and the governor went out and spent $790 million already, more than asked for a supplemental. And I get that, and you know, the governor is, I like to say that the governor is a fairly scholarly person. I feel like I could have a good candid discussion with him. But as a CPA, I tell you what we're building fixed cost into a system of government that when the next recession hits, it's going to be catastrophic to the citizens of the Commonwealth. The Independent Fiscal Office has already published its 5-year outlook and said the trend of young working families and employers out of the Commonwealth is increasing rapidly, and that older people are moving in predominantly from New Jersey, New York, and Maryland because we don't tax retirement income. We are graying as a state, and the cost of taking care of seniors is going up at a rate of about $1.5 billion per year. So if you pull out your tax base and they move out of state, and you build in all these fixed costs, the next recession will be fatal for us if we're not careful.
Wow. No easy solution, is there?
Well, I think there is. Oh, I think there is.
Okay.
Oh, I do. In fact, I'm actually optimistic. We have a bill, House Bill 1995. It's called the Keystone Solvency Operating Study. SOS, it's a nautical term for save our ship, save our state in this case. And what it will do is I want people in government to know that they have something to lose here too. There's a constitutional mandate that all pensions be paid unless a state goes into bankruptcy or becomes insolvent. And that's already happened with Puerto Rico. I believe it's going to happen with Illinois next. So my study will say and will mandate that we study what happens if we go insolvent as a state. And I can tell you what will happen in next recession. Someone somewhere is going to say, we can't cut these other programs, but we can get away with not paying the pension. And that will be the nail in the coffin for keeping the Commonwealth out of Pennsylvania. If we take decisive steps now, we can turn this ship around. And with the great fiscal reforms that my leadership team has already put into effect, some great work that has already been done by all the representatives I mentioned. There's some great fiscal reform bills. House Bills 52 to 58 will reform how government is structured. Seth Grove, Dawn Kiefer, and Torrin Ecker, and some others have prepared a package for government reforms that I'm a co-sponsor of that are great. I've got a bill to have the government go lean, House Bill 1053. That's already through second consideration, which just has to come up for a floor vote. House Bill 953 is an Auditor General fraud and forensic capability to give the same type of capability that the Office of Inspector General has. We put all these things together. We do the pension reform in terms of allowing us to earn greater money on the assets that we already have. I think Pennsylvania will be the leading edge of great growth and reforms and fiscal restraint for the next 50 years based upon those efforts passing. So I'm really optimistic if we take this challenge seriously and do something about it.
We have already heard from our current executive director, Eric Failing, but I also talked recently with his predecessor, Bob O'Hara, the former executive director of the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference. And I talked with Bob about one of the first bills that he worked on when he took over.
The first thing we worked on was the purely public charities legislation. This was legislation to define what a charity was in Pennsylvania. It resulted or it was caused by a number of municipalities interested in getting some remuneration nonprofits, not only Catholic facilities, but also hospitals and schools and other programs in their bailiwick. And we, along with a number of hospitals and other groups, were concerned about how that was defined and who was a charity and who was not. This was quite a battle that went on for years and years. In the end, and I think going back to 1997, 1998, 99, the legislation passed. It was Act 55 at the time, and it's still in effect, and that's legislation which gives a fair definition from our perspective, and was accepted clearly by all people at the time to define what a charity is.
And finally, it's time to take a look at some of the folks that won't be continuing with their jobs here in Harrisburg in the coming months and years. It's all part of the normal turnover here at the state capitol. I have to say that some of these announcements came as surprises, and yes, they're kind of sad in a way. I will miss these folks, and some of them were very good allies at the PA Catholic Conference. Stephen Barrar of Delaware County is not running for re-election. He told the Daily Times of Delaware County that he wants to spend more time with his family and is also facing health issues. He's going to retire. He is 65 years old. Chris Dush of Jefferson and Indiana counties will not run again. He issued a statement several weeks ago when he reminded folks that he pledged 6 years ago to only run for 3 terms in the state house. Others not looking to run again in the House of Representatives are Neil Goodman, Democrat of Schuylkill County, Marcia Hahn, Republican of Northampton County. She is joined by Democrat Steve McCarter from Montgomery County, who will not be running again, and by Republican Justin Simmons of Lehigh, Montgomery, and Northampton counties. Marcy Topol, Republican of Montgomery County, will not be running either, and this one really surprised us. She had become a high-ranking member in her caucus. Representative Eugene DiGirolamo is going to be a Bucks County Commissioner. Representative Justin Walsh will now be Judge Justin Walsh of Westmoreland County. And Representative Ted Nesbitt goes from representative to judge in Mercer County. Remember I mentioned that some people are lawmakers by career? The longest-serving lawmaker from Central PA that I could find was Representative Mike Sterla, Democrat from Lancaster County, elected in 1990. But this guy, Representative Thomas Calderon of Berks County, has been in office since 1977. He has been re-elected 22 times, the most ever for a member of the PA House of Representatives.
Well, thanks, Al. That does it for us, and we hope you enjoyed this week's show. To learn more about the Diocese of Harrisburg and our ministries, please visit hbgdiocese.org. More information on the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference and the important work they are doing can be found at pacatholic.org. From all of us at the Diocese and the Catholic Conference, thank you for watching.